I was halfway to the kitchen when I heard my brother laugh low, sharp, ugly, and say the words that would change everything. "She's not real family anyway." 10 minutes later, I had the house deed in my bag, a plan in my head, and the kind of cold clarity you only get when betrayal finally burns the last bridge. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck 11:30 p.m., marking the exact moment I decided that blood might be thicker than water, but legal documents are thicker than both. My name is Rachel Moore, and at 36 years old, I thought I understood everything about family, trust, and the weight of inherited responsibility. As a project director at Lakeview Properties in Cleveland, Ohio, I'd spent the last decade building other people's dreams into concrete and steel, but nothing in my professional life had prepared me for the moment when family would become my most complicated project. The house in question sat on Maple Street in suburban Toledo, a 2-story wooden structure that had weathered 43 Ohio winters since my parents bought it as newlyweds. Every creaking floorboard held a memory Dad teaching me to ride a bike in the driveway, Mom's Sunday pot roasts filling the kitchen with warmth, the pencil marks on the doorframe tracking mine and Mark's growth through the years. Those walls had absorbed our laughter, our arguments, and the quiet grief when cancer took Mom and a heart attack claimed Dad 18 months later. Mark was 4 years older than me, my big brother who'd taught me to throw a baseball and defend myself against playground bullies. But somewhere between those childhood days and now, life had worn him down. His construction business folded during the recession. The restaurant he'd opened with a friend lasted 8 months. His latest venture, some kind of online consulting firm, existed more in his imagination than reality. While I'd climbed the corporate ladder through 60-hour weeks and calculated risks, Mark had bounced from scheme to scheme, each failure adding another line to his face and another excuse to his repertoire. When our parents' estate was settled, the will was clear. The house, valued at $430,000, went to me. Mark received a modest sum enough to clear some debts and start fresh, if he'd been wise about it. I'd seen the flash of resentment in his eyes when the lawyer read the terms, but he'd hugged me afterward and said he understood. "You always were better with responsibility," he'd said, and I'd believed him. 6 months ago, Mark had shown up at my downtown apartment at 10:15 p.m., looking defeated. His rental house had mold issues, the landlord was evicting them, and with his credit score, nobody would lease to him. Lori stood behind him, clutching Sophie's hand while Evan slouched against the hallway wall, earbuds in, pretending not to care about their family's latest crisis. "Just for 6 months," Mark had promised. "Until we get back on our feet. I'll handle all the maintenance. Keep the yard perfect. You won't even know we're there." I'd looked at my niece and nephew Sophie with her father's stubborn chin but her mother's gentle eyes, Evan trying so hard to seem tough at 15, and felt my resolve crumble. The house was sitting empty anyway, costing me property taxes and maintenance. What kind of sister would I be if I didn't help? We'd drawn up a simple agreement they'd cover utilities and basic upkeep, maintain the property to its current standard, and be out by February 1st. Mark had gripped my hand with both of his when we shook on it, tears in his eyes. "You're saving us, Rach. I won't forget this." As I signed the papers letting them move in, I'd felt the warmth of doing right by family, of honoring what our parents would have wanted. The house that had sheltered us as children would shelter Mark's children now. It seemed like the perfect solution, a way to keep the family legacy alive while helping my brother through another rough patch. I had no idea I was handing over more than just keys. I was giving him the opportunity to show me exactly what he thought of family, of me, and of the bonds I'd believed were unbreakable. The first month had been exactly what I'd hoped for. Mark sent photos of the lawn freshly mowed. Lori texted me about the new curtains she'd sewn for Sophie's room, and Evan had even called to thank me for letting him have Dad's old study as his bedroom. I'd driven by twice, and the house looked lived in but cared for bikes in the driveway, flowers in Mom's window boxes, the porch light glowing warmly at dusk. But by month 3, the updates stopped coming. When I called, Mark's responses grew shorter, more evasive. "Everything's fine. Rach, stop worrying so much. You know how you get. The dismissive tone should have been my first real warning, but I pushed it aside. Work was demanding. I was juggling 3 major development projects, and I told myself that no news was good news. Then Mrs. Patterson called, our elderly neighbor, who'd brought casseroles when Mom was sick and kept an eye on the house after they died. Didn't mince words. Rachel, honey, I'm not one to interfere, but that brother of yours is letting the place go. The grass is knee-high, there's trash cans sitting out all week, and last Saturday night, the music didn't stop until 3:45 a.m. Your mother would be heartbroken. I'd driven out that evening, and my stomach had dropped when I turned onto Maple Street. The lawn wasn't just overgrown, it was a jungle. Beer bottles glinted in the unmowed grass. One of the shutters hung crooked, and there were at least 6 cars crammed into the driveway and onto the lawn, leaving tire ruts in what used to be Mom's prized garden bed. Mark had answered the door in a stained t-shirt, looking annoyed at the interruption. Behind him, I could see pizza boxes stacked on the antique dining table and what looked suspiciously like a burn mark on the carpet where Dad's reading chair used to sit. It's not as bad as it looks, he'd said, not even inviting me in. We had some friends over last weekend. I'll clean it up. Mark, we had an agreement. Jesus, Rachel, relax. It's just a house. It's not a museum. The words stung more than I'd expected. Just a house. As if it hadn't been the center of our entire childhood, the last tangible piece of our parents. 2 weeks later, I received a notice from the city about a noise complaint. Then another neighbor, Tom Rodriguez, stopped me at the grocery store. I didn't want to say anything, but there's been some strange people coming and going at all hours, cars pulling up at midnight, staying for 10 minutes, then leaving. I'm not saying it's anything illegal, but when I confronted Mark about it, he'd exploded. Those are my business associates. You think you're so much better than me because you've got your fancy job and your downtown apartment. Not all of us can be perfect like you, Rachel. The utilities bills started arriving at my apartment past due notices because Mark hadn't transferred them to his name as agreed. The water bill was triple what it should be. The electric bill suggested they were running every appliance 24/7. When I asked about it, Lori tearfully explained they were having some cash flow issues but promised they'd catch up soon. I began driving by the house weekly, each time documenting new damage, new neglect, the broken fence panel that appeared in April, the missing downspout in May, the oil stains spreading across the driveway like accusations. Each visit, I'd tell myself to confront them properly, to put my foot down. But then I'd think of Sophie and Evan, of the instability they'd already endured, and I'd retreat to my car, snapping photos on my phone and swallowing my growing anger. By late May, 6 months had turned into 8, and their February deadline was a distant memory. When I brought it up, Mark would pivot to guilt. You want to throw your own family out on the street? Is that what Mom and Dad would want? Or he'd promise change. Just give me 2 more months. I've got a big deal coming through. The house I'd cherished was becoming unrecognizable. And worse, Mark seemed to be doing it deliberately, as if destroying the physical structure could somehow erase the fact that our parents had chosen to leave it to me. But it wasn't until that Friday night in June, when I decided to drop by unannounced, that I finally understood the depth of his resentment and the calculated cruelty of his occupation of our childhood home. The Friday night in question had started innocently enough. I'd finished a major project presentation at 4:30 p.m. and decided to celebrate with dinner at my favorite restaurant near the office. But as I sat alone with my wine, scrolling through old family photos on my phone, nostalgia got the better of me. By 8:45 p.m., I was driving toward Toledo, telling myself I just wanted to see the house, maybe even surprise them with good news about my promotion. The street was packed with cars when I arrived. Music thumped from inside the house, bass lines vibrating through the walls our father had insulated himself one summer when I was 12. Every window blazed with light, and I could see figures moving behind the curtains far more than just Mark's family of 4. I parked 3 houses down and walked up the familiar sidewalk, my heels clicking against concrete that still bore our childhood chalk drawings, faded but visible. The front door stood ajar, letting out waves of music, laughter, and the acrid smell of cigarette smoke that would have sent our asthmatic mother reaching for her inhaler. Nobody noticed me slip inside. The living room was crammed with strangers, red Solo cups in hand, ash grinding into the hardwood floors I'd helped Dad refinish the summer before college. Someone had moved Mom's china cabinet to make room for a beer pong table. Her precious figurines were gone, probably boxed up somewhere, or worse, sold. I pressed myself against the wall, heart pounding, and made my way toward the kitchen. That's when I heard Mark's voice, loud and slurred, carrying over the music from the back porch. I recognized his drinking voice, the one that came out after his 3rd beer, when all his filters dissolved. "Told you guys, just a few more months and this place'll be mine," he was saying. I froze in the hallway, hidden behind the doorframe. "But I thought your sister owned it," an unfamiliar male voice, skeptical. Mark's laugh was ugly, triumphant. "She's not real family anyway." The words hit me like ice water in the veins. My parents adopted her when she was a baby. Felt sorry for her, I guess. But this house, this was built for real Moors, for blood. My kids are the actual grandchildren here. "Wait, she doesn't know she's adopted a woman's voice. Surprised?" "Hell no. Parents never told her, wanted to spare her feelings or some shit. But I've known since I was 16, found the papers when I was looking for Christmas presents." Another harsh laugh. "She thinks she's so special because Mom and Dad left her the house. But once I establish residency, get a good lawyer. I can challenge the will. Adopted kids versus biological blood wins." "That's cold, man." Even his drinking buddy sounded uncomfortable. "It's practical. She's got her fancy job, her money. She doesn't need this place. My kids do. Sophie and Evan, they're the real legacy here. Not some stranger my parents felt obligated to raise." I couldn't breathe. The hallway walls seemed to close in, covered in family photos that now felt like lies. There I was at 5, sitting on Dad's shoulders. At 10, helping Mom in the garden. At 18, between my parents at graduation, their faces glowing with pride. Had it all been obligation pity? My legs moved without conscious thought, carrying me to the small office where Mom had paid bills and kept important documents. My hands shook as I opened the filing cabinet still unlocked, Mark's carelessness working in my favor for once. There, in a folder marked Legal Documents, between my birth certificate and their marriage license, was a manila envelope I'd never noticed before. Certificate of Adoption, Baby Girl Moore, formerly Baby Girl Jane Doe, placed with David and Linda Moore. The date made me exactly 6 weeks old when they took me home. Behind it, an envelope with my name in Mom's careful script. For Rachel. When the time is right. I shoved both documents into my purse, along with the house deed I'd come to check on, making sure Mark hadn't forged anything. My phone showed 10:15 p.m. Time moved strangely, seconds stretching like hours as I navigated back through the party, invisible in my devastation. Outside, I sat in my car for 20 minutes, engine off, staring at the house that apparently had never really been mine. Every memory felt tainted now was that why Mark had always been the favorite, why he'd gotten the bigger room, the later curfew, the extra chances after each failure, had everyone known but me. But as the initial shock faded, replaced by a cold, calculating anger, I realized something else. Mark's plan was legally worthless. Adoption didn't invalidate inheritance. His cruelty was matched only by his ignorance. And now I knew exactly who my brother really was, not just a failure, but a man willing to destroy me for a house he couldn't legally take. I drove home at exactly the speed limit, my mind already working through next steps. By the time I pulled into my apartment garage at 11:50 p.m., I had a plan. Mark wanted to play games with family and legacy. He was about to learn that sometimes. The family you choose to hurt has the power to choose their response. Saturday morning came too soon. I'd barely slept, alternating between staring at the adoption certificate and fighting the urge to open Mom's letter. At 7:30 a.m., I made coffee with mechanical precision and called the one person who could give me legal clarity, Richard Carter, our family lawyer for the past 30 years. "Rachel, it's been too long. How's that brother of yours?" His warm voice nearly broke my composure. "Actually, Mr. Carter, that's why I'm calling. I need to discuss the house and some documents I found last night." The pause told me he knew exactly which documents. "I think it's best if we meet in person. Can you come to my office this morning? Say, 10 o'clock. The drive to his downtown Toledo office was a blur. I'd dressed carefully professional blazer, the pearls Mom gave me for college graduation, my hair pulled back severely, armor for a battle I was only beginning to understand. Mr. Carter looked exactly as I remembered from the will-reading, silver-haired, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, the same navy suit he'd probably worn for decades. He gestured to the leather chairs across from his desk, the ones where I'd sat with Mark while he explained our inheritance. "You found the adoption papers," he said gently. It wasn't a question. "You knew—" My voice came out steadier than I felt. Everyone knew but me. He sighed, removing his glasses to clean them, a delay tactic I recognized from countless meetings. "Your parents agonized over when to tell you, Linda especially. She wrote that letter the week before her diagnosis, planning to give it to you on your 30th birthday. Then the cancer came, and, well, she made me promise to let you find out when you were ready. Mark's known since he was 16. An unfortunate discovery. Your parents were devastated when they realized he'd found out. They'd noticed changes in his behavior toward you after that small cruelties. Distance. They actually adjusted their will because of it." I sat straighter. "What do you mean?" Mr. Carter pulled out a thick folder. "Originally, they planned to split everything equally, but after Mark's reaction to the adoption news and seeing how it poisoned his relationship with you, they changed their minds. They wanted to ensure you were protected, that you had something entirely yours that couldn't be taken away. He thinks he can challenge the will, that biological children have more rights than adopted ones." The lawyer actually chuckled. "I'd love to see him try. Rachel, legally speaking, you are as much their child as Mark. Adoption creates the exact same legal relationship as biological birth. Moreover, your parents' will explicitly states their intentions. There's no ground for challenge whatsoever." He leaned forward, his expression growing serious. "But I should warn you, Mark did come to see me about 3 months ago. He was fishing for information about squatters' rights, adverse possession claims. I told him quite clearly that family members given permission to occupy a property cannot claim adverse possession, but he seemed determined to find a loophole. "He's destroying the house," I said quietly, "letting it fall apart, throwing parties, treating it like something he's entitled to take." Mr. Carter nodded. "Rachel, you have every legal right to evict him. The agreement was for 6 months. That's passed. You've been more than generous." I fingered the deed in my purse. "I want him out, legally, properly, with no room for him to twist this into me being the villain. I can file the paperwork Monday morning. Given the documented damage and breach of agreement, we can have him served by Wednesday. Ohio law requires 30 days' notice for month-to-month tenancies, which is what this has become." He made notes on a legal pad. "I'd also suggest hiring a property management company to document the current state of the house. You'll want evidence if you need to pursue damages." We spent another hour going through the legal specifics. As I stood to leave, Mr. Carter handed me a business card. "This is the best property management company in Toledo. Tell them I sent you." Then, softer, "Your parents loved you fiercely. Rachel, biology had nothing to do with it. Don't let Mark's poison change that truth." I sat in my car afterward, finally brave enough to open Mom's letter. Her handwriting, still so familiar, blurred through my tears. My dearest Rachel, if you're reading this, you've learned the truth we kept from you too long. You were 6 weeks old when they placed you in my arms, and I knew instantly you were mine, not because a judge said so, but because my heart claimed you completely. We never told you because you were never anything but our daughter. The how didn't matter, only the what and what you were was loved, wanted, chosen. Mark knows, and I fear it's changed him. Don't let his smallness diminish your truth. You are a more in every way that matters. The house is yours because you'll honor what it represents, not walls and wood, but the love that built a family. All my love, Mom. I drove to the bank, withdrew the deed and related documents from the safety deposit box, and made copies of everything. Then I went home and researched property lawyers, eviction procedures, and restoration companies. By 6 p.m., I had a battle plan that would make my corporate negotiations look like playground games. Mark thought he was playing chess, moving pieces toward a checkmate years in the making. He didn't realize I'd already won, not because of blood or biology, but because our parents had seen exactly who we both were and planned accordingly. Now it was time to show him that the sister he'd dismissed as not real family was real enough to reclaim what was hers. Sunday morning arrived crisp and clear, one of those perfect June days that made Ohio summers worth enduring. I dressed deliberately jeans and the old Case Western t-shirt I'd worn while helping Dad repair the deck, my hair in a simple ponytail. No armor today, just the clothes of someone who belonged in that house. I arrived at 10:15, parking directly in the driveway behind Mark's truck, blocking him in. The lawn looked even worse in daylight brown patches where beer had been spilled, cigarette butts scattered like accusations. Mom's rose bushes were dying from neglect. Through the window, I could see them in the kitchen, Mark at the table with his laptop, Lori washing dishes, the kids in the living room with the TV blaring. A perfectly normal Sunday morning for them, in my house, living their life on my inheritance while planning to steal the rest. I didn't knock. The door was unlocked, they'd grown that comfortable. The kitchen still smelled like coffee and bacon, such a normal smell in such an abnormal situation. Mark looked up from his screen, irritation flashing across his face before he forced it into false warmth. Rachel, you should have called. The place is a mess from Friday. I know about Friday. I set my purse on the counter, the deed and legal documents visible inside. I was here. Lori's hands stilled in the soapy water. Mark's coffee mug stopped halfway to his lips. I heard every word. Mark, about how I'm not real family, about your brilliant legal strategy to steal the house because your children are the actual grandchildren. My voice remained steady, calm even, the kind of controlled tone I used when firing contractors who'd breached their agreements. Rachel, I can explain. Lori started, but I held up my hand. No need. Mark explained everything perfectly to his friends. 34 years of pretending to be my brother, when apparently I've been nothing but an interloper since you were 16. Mark's face had gone pale, then red. You don't understand. This house should stay with blood family. It's what's right. Right. I pulled out the deed, Mom's letter, the adoption certificate. Let me tell you about right. Right is our parents choosing to raise me as their own. Right is them leaving me this house because they knew exactly who you'd become, someone who'd use biology as a weapon. You have everything, Mark exploded, shoving back from the table. Your perfect job, your perfect life, your perfect inheritance. My kids deserve... Your kids deserve a father who keeps his word. I turned to look through the doorway at Evan and Sophie, who'd muted the TV to listen. They deserve better than learning that family only counts if it's biological. Aunt Rachel. Sophie started, but Evan pulled her back, his 15-year-old face already showing understanding of adult betrayals. I turned back to Mark. According to our agreement, you were supposed to be out 4 months ago. I've been patient because I actually believed in family, all kinds of family. But you've made it clear that patience is just weakness to you. I pulled out my phone, showing him the screenshots of Mr. Carter's emails, the property management company's assessment appointment, the formal eviction notice ready to file. You have 30 days, not 31, not just until I get back on my feet. 30 days from tomorrow when you'll be formally served. You can't do this. Lori had found her voice, tears streaming. Where will we go? Think of the children. I've done nothing but think of Sophie and Evan. I kept my voice level. I thought of them when I let you move in. I thought of them every time I ignored the damage, the parties, the broken agreements. But what lesson am I teaching them if I let their father destroy this house while plotting to steal it? Mark stepped closer, trying for intimidation. You wouldn't dare. What would people say? Throwing out your own family. The family that doesn't consider me family. I laughed, short and sharp. The neighbors already know what you've done to this place. Mrs. Patterson, Tom Rodriguez, they've all called me. As for the rest, tell them whatever you want. Tell them your adopted sister is a monster. It'll pair nicely with what you've already been saying behind my back. This is Mom and Dad's house. No. I picked up the deed. This is my house. Legally, morally, and in every way that matters. Our parents saw you clearly. Mark, they knew that biology alone doesn't make you worthy of inheritance. The silence stretched taut. Sophie was crying quietly. Evan had moved to stand behind his sister, protective. Lori stood frozen by the sink, soap bubbles disappearing from her forgotten hands. 30 days, I repeated. Every day past that, I add another $1,000 to the damages I'll be pursuing. And Mark, if you think you can damage the house more in retaliation, remember, I've already documented everything. Every broken fixture, every stain, every piece of Mom's furniture that's mysteriously disappeared. I gathered my documents, my hands steady despite the earthquake in my chest. At the doorway, I turned back. Oh, and the locks will be changed the minute you're out. Don't even think about keeping copies of the keys. You're making a mistake, Mark said, his voice low and threatening. Family should stick together. Funny how you only believe that when you need something from me. I met his eyes one last time. Mom left me a letter. Want to know what it said, that the house was mine because I'd honor what it represents, love that builds a family. You've spent 8 months proving her right. I walked out, leaving them in the kitchen of the house that would never be theirs, past the dying roses and ruined lawn, to my car. As I drove away, I didn't look back. There was nothing left to see but the ruins of what I'd once believed was an unbreakable bond. The war for the house had begun, and I'd fired the first shot. But Mark had taught me well, when someone shows you they're your enemy, believe them the first time. The first text came at 11:47 p.m. that same Sunday night. You're seriously going to make us homeless. What kind of person are you? By Monday morning, my phone had logged 37 missed calls, 19 texts ranging from pleading to threatening, and 6 voicemails I deleted without listening. Mark's social media campaign started Tuesday. Screenshots flooded my inbox from concerned cousins and distant relatives. My heartless sister is throwing my children onto the street, read one post, complete with a photo of Sophie and Evan looking mournfully at the camera. After everything our family has done for her, this is how she repays us. Some people forget where they came from. The irony of that last line wasn't lost on me. By Wednesday, when the formal eviction notice was served, Mark had mobilized what he called his support network. My phone rang with numbers I didn't recognize, Lori's sister calling me a cold bitch, Mark's old high school friends leaving messages about family values, even the pastor from their church suggesting I come in for counseling about my hardness of heart. I blocked them all. Thursday brought escalation. Mrs. Patterson called, her voice shaky. Rachel, dear, I thought you should know there was a moving truck at the house today, but they weren't moving out. They were moving things in. Old furniture, boxes, just filling up the garage and basement. He's trying to make it harder to evict them. I told Mr. Carter when I called him. making it look like they're more established. Document everything, he advised, and hire that property management company now. We need professional witnesses. Premier Property Management sent their best assessor Friday morning. The report she emailed me that afternoon made my stomach turn. Beyond the visible damage I'd documented, she'd found water damage in the basement from a mysteriously broken pipe, burn marks on the original hardwood floors, poorly hidden under new area rugs, kitchen cabinet doors hanging off their hinges, missing copper piping in the downstairs bathroom, what appeared to be intentional scratches on every wall, as if someone had taken keys to them. The estimated repairs had ballooned to $43,000. That evening, I got a call from Tom Rodriguez. Rachel, I'm sorry to bother you, but there's been a lot of activity at the house today. Cars coming and going, people carrying boxes out. I thought you should know I saw them loading what looked like your mother's china cabinet into a pickup truck. I thanked him and immediately called the police. The officer who responded was sympathetic but clear. Without proof, it belongs to you and not them. It's a civil matter. You'll have to pursue it through the courts. Saturday morning, the campaign shifted to my workplace. My boss pulled me aside after our morning meeting. Rachel, I've been getting some concerning calls about your family situation. Someone named Mark saying you're mentally unstable, that you're abusing your position here to hurt your family. He's my brother, I said simply. I'm evicting him from my house. He's not taking it well. She studied me for a moment. Do I need to worry about this affecting your work? Absolutely not. I've hired lawyers to handle everything properly. This won't touch Lakeview Properties. But Mark wasn't done. The emails started Sunday afternoon, sent from various fake addresses, but all obviously him. You think you're so smart with your fancy lawyers. Mom and Dad would be disgusted by what you've become. That house will never be yours, no matter what some paper says. We know where you really came from. Maybe everyone else should too. That last one made me pause. Was he threatening to publicize my adoption? As if that were some shameful secret rather than proof of how deeply I'd been wanted. Midway through the second week, the neighbors started calling more frequently. Music at 2 a.m., cars parked across driveways, trash scattered across multiple yards. One reported seeing Evan throwing rocks at passing cars, though when confronted, Mark claimed it was just boys being boys. He's trying to turn the neighborhood against the house. I told Mr. Carter, making it seem like a problem property. Keep documenting. Every complaint helps our case if we need to pursue criminal damage charges. The property manager's second visit revealed fresh disaster holes punched in walls, clearly deliberate. The bathroom sink ripped partially from its mounting. What looked like motor oil poured on the garage floor. Even worse, she'd found evidence of mice in the kitchen. Later investigation revealed someone had scattered food in the walls to attract them. By the third week, I'd stopped reading the texts, stopped checking social media, stopped answering calls from unknown numbers. I hired a security company to do regular drive-bys of the house. Their reports were thorough and damning parties every weekend, suspicious foot traffic at odd hours, systematic destruction of anything valuable or meaningful. Lori made one last attempt, showing up at my office on a Thursday afternoon. Sophie in tow. Security called up to warn me, but I agreed to see them. Please, she begged, while Sophie stood silent beside her. I know Mark's been difficult, but we'll pay for the damages. We'll fix everything. Just don't make us leave. With what money? Lori. The same money that was supposed to pay utilities. The same money Mark's spending on lawyers to research squatters' rights. Her face crumbled. You don't understand. He's obsessed. He stays up all night researching legal cases, talking about family rights and biological inheritance. This is destroying him. No, I said quietly. He's destroying my house. And he's teaching your children that cruelty is acceptable if you feel entitled to something. Sophie finally spoke, her 12-year-old voice small but clear. I heard Dad say you're not really our aunt. Is that true? I knelt beside her. I'm adopted, Sophie. That means your grandparents chose me to be their daughter. Just like I chose to help your family when you needed it. Being family isn't just about blood, it's about how we treat each other. She nodded slowly, processing this. Then, even quieter, is that why Dad's being so mean? Lori pulled her daughter close, tears falling freely now. We both knew the answer, and we both knew that some truths were too heavy for 12-year-old shoulders. As they left, I watched from my window as they walked to their car. Sophie looked back once, raising her hand in a small wave. I waved back, my heart breaking for the children caught in their father's war, but I couldn't save them by letting Mark win. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is show people that actions have consequences. 7 days left on the eviction notice. The house, my parents' house. My house stood wounded but waiting, and I was done letting Mark Moore pretend that biology gave him the right to destroy what love had built. The morning of eviction day arrived gray and humid, the kind of oppressive July weather that makes Ohio feel like a swamp. I met the sheriff's deputies at 8 a.m. sharp, along with Mr. Carter and 2 representatives from Premier Property Management. We formed a small convoy heading toward Maple Street, toward the inevitable confrontation I'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. "They've been informed," I asked Deputy Morrison, a tall woman with kind eyes who'd handled the paperwork with professional efficiency. "Served with final notice 72 hours ago," she confirmed, though when we drove by yesterday evening, it looked like they were still fully moved in. Of course they were. Mark would push this to the last possible second, probably hoping I'd break, that faced with actual enforcement. I'd crumble like I always had when we were kids and he'd broken my toys or blamed me for his mistakes. The street was unusually full for a Tuesday morning. Neighbors had emerged to witness the drama. Mrs. Patterson standing on her porch with her arms crossed. Tom Rodriguez pretending to check his mail while obviously watching. Word had spread. Mark's truck was in the driveway, packed haphazardly with boxes. Through the windows, I could see movement frantic, last-minute packing. They'd waited until the final morning to start moving, either from denial or one last manipulation tactic. Deputy Morrison knocked firmly. "Sheriff's Department, eviction enforcement." The door opened to reveal Mark, unshaven, wearing the same clothes I'd seen him in 2 days ago. His eyes found mine over the deputy's shoulder, burning with a hatred that made me step back involuntarily. "You actually went through with it," he said, voice rough. "Your own brother." "Well, we need you to vacate the premises immediately," Deputy Morrison continued, professional and unmoved. "You have 2 hours to remove your remaining belongings. Anything left after that time will be considered abandoned property." Lori appeared behind him, Sophie and Evan flanking her. The kids looked exhausted, scared. Evan wouldn't meet my eyes, but Sophie stared at me with something that might have been understanding or accusation, I couldn't tell which. 2 hours, Lori's voice cracked. "We can't possibly—" "Ma'am, you've had 30 days' notice," the deputy reminded her. 2 hours is generous. What followed was chaos barely contained by legal structure. Mark and Lori threw belongings into boxes with no care for organization. Evan carried garbage bags of clothes to the truck. Sophie stood in the living room, clutching a teddy bear I remembered from her toddler years, watching her world collapse. I made myself watch it all, made myself witness the consequences of my decision, even as my chest tightened with each trip they made to their vehicles. This was my childhood home being emptied of my brother's family, and no amount of justified anger could make it feel less like a tragedy. An hour in, Mark emerged with something that made my blood freeze Mom's jewelry box, the wooden one Dad had made for their anniversary. "That stays," I said, my first words since arriving. He turned, clutching it against his chest like a prize. "This was Mom's. I have just as much right." "Check the inventory," Mr. Carter interrupted smoothly. Ms. Moore provided a detailed list of family heirlooms that belong to the house. That box is on it. Mark's face contorted. For a moment, I thought he might throw it, destroy it rather than return it. Then Lori touched his arm, whispered something urgent. With visible reluctance, he set it on the porch. "You want everything, don't you?" he snarled. "The house, the memories, the whole perfect daughter act. Well, you can have it, but you'll be alone in it. No family, no one who actually shares your blood." "Mark, stop!" Lori's voice was firm. "Just stop. We've lost. Let's go with some dignity." The final 30 minutes were quieter. Boxes appeared and disappeared. Furniture I didn't recognize, the things they'd moved in to establish residency, was loaded into a rental truck. The house began to empty, room by room, until only echoes remained. At 9:55 a.m., Deputy Morrison did her final walkthrough. "Property is vacated," she announced. "Mr. Moore, Mrs. Moore, please surrender all keys." Mark threw his keys at my feet. They scattered across the porch where we'd played as children, where he'd taught me to tie my shoes, where we'd waited for the school bus on countless mornings when being siblings meant something different than it did now. "You know what the funny thing is," he said, standing by his overloaded truck. "I used to protect you. When kids at school asked why you looked different from us, I'd punch them, told them you were my sister, and that was all that mattered." The words hit harder than any of his anger had. What changed? Mark. "I grew up, realized that blood matters, heritage matters. You'll never understand because you don't have any." He climbed into the truck, then leaned out the window. "Enjoy your empty house, Rachel. Hope it's worth losing your family over." "I didn't lose my family," I said quietly, though I'm not sure he heard me. "I lost you the day you decided I wasn't really your sister." They pulled away in a sad convoy, Mark's truck, Lori's sedan, the rental truck. Sophie waved from the back window until they turned the corner. Evan never looked back. I stood on the porch of my parents' house, my house with the sheriff's deputies, my lawyer, and the property management team. Mrs. Patterson came over, patted my shoulder. "You did the right thing, dear. Your parents would be proud." But as I walked through the empty, damaged rooms, seeing the deliberate destruction, the holes in walls where family photos once hung, the stains and scars left behind like accusations, I wasn't sure about anything except this. I owned a house worth $430,000, and it had cost me the only brother I'd ever known. The locksmith arrived at 11 a.m. As he worked, I found myself in my parents' bedroom, empty now except for the scratches on the floor where their bed had been. In the corner, partially hidden by peeling wallpaper, someone had carved into the wall, "Real family only." I ran my fingers over the words, then took a photo for the damage report. Let him have his bitter victory. I had the house, the deed, the legal right. But standing in that empty room, I understood that sometimes winning feels exactly like losing, and some bridges, once burned, light up truths you can never unsee. The restoration crews arrived at noon, armed with industrial cleaners, patching compound, and paint. I walked through each room with the foreman, cataloging destruction that went deeper than just physical damage. Every scratch, stain, and hole told the story of my brother's resentment, his desperate attempt to wound me through the only thing he thought I valued. In my old bedroom, now scarred with intentional damage, I found something that stopped me cold carved into the closet doorframe were our old height measurements. Mark, age 7. Rachel, age 3, in Dad's careful printing. Mark hadn't touched those. Even in his rage, some memories remained sacred. The workers dispersed through the house, their professional chatter filling spaces that had held so much anger. I retreated to the back porch, sitting on the steps where Mark had revealed my adoption to his drinking buddies. The yard stretched before me, brown and neglected. Mom's garden just dirt and dead stems. That's when I heard footsteps on the gravel drive. I tensed, expecting Mark's return, some last confrontation, but it was Mrs. Patterson, carrying a cardboard box. "I've been saving these," she said, setting the box beside me. "Knew that brother of yours might try something with them." Inside were Mom's garden angels, the little ceramic figures she'd collected and placed throughout her flower beds. Mark must have thrown them out, but our elderly neighbor had rescued them, one by one. Your mother and I used to talk while she gardened. Mrs. Patterson continued. The day they brought you home, she was out here planning where to plant a rose bush to commemorate it. Said every child deserved their own growing thing. I found the rose bush later, behind the garage, dead from neglect, but still there. Its marker reading, Rachel's Rose, 1988. By 4 p.m., the house hummed with restoration work. Holes being patched, floors being refinished, walls being painted. I wandered through it all like a ghost, touching door frames, remembering. In the basement, workers had hauled out the junk Mark had moved in, revealing Dad's old workbench. In the kitchen drawer, I found one of Mom's recipe cards, grease-stained and familiar, Rachel's favorite chocolate chip cookies. The foreman found me there, holding that recipe card like evidence of belonging. Ma'am, we found something you should see. In the master bedroom, they'd pulled up the damaged carpet to assess the hardwood. Underneath, in the corner where my parents' bed had been, was a floor safe I'd never known existed. The combination, when Mr. Carter checked the estate papers, was my adoption date. Inside were documents my original adoption papers, photos of my birth mother so young, so scared-looking, letters from the adoption agency, and at the bottom, a videotape labeled For Rachel from Mom and Dad. I drove home with that tape, leaving the crews to their work. In my apartment, I dug out my old VCR, hands shaking as I inserted the tape. The screen flickered to life, revealing my parents, younger, sitting in the living room of the house. Mom was crying before she even started speaking. Rachel, sweetheart, if you're watching this, it means you've learned the truth and we're not there to tell you ourselves. Dad's arm was around her shoulders, his own eyes wet. We wanted to tell you so many times, but the truth is, we were selfish. We loved being your parents so much. We couldn't bear to risk you thinking it meant anything less than what it was everything. They talked for 20 minutes about the day they got the call, the first time they held me, how Mark had insisted on giving me his favorite teddy bear. They talked about their fears, their joy, their absolute certainty that I was meant to be theirs. If Mark has been unkind about this, forgive him, Mom said near the end. He's always been afraid of losing things. But you, my darling girl, you've always known that love multiplies when you give it away. The house is yours because you understand what makes a home. The tape ended with Dad adding, We didn't choose you, Rachel. You chose us. The moment they put you in our arms, you grabbed onto my finger and wouldn't let go. You've been choosing us ever since, and we have been so grateful. I sat in my apartment, sobbing for everything found and lost, for the parents who loved me beyond biology, for the brother who couldn't see past it. Then I drove back to the house, where the workers had left for the day. The locks were changed, the worst damage already being repaired. In the master bedroom, under the loose floorboard where Mark had carved his bitter message, I found the wooden box. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper older than my memories, was a silver bracelet with a single charm, a tiny house with a heart etched on the door. An envelope beneath it held Mom's explanation. For Rachel's 18th birthday, your first home was our hearts. This house is just walls and wood, but you made it a home by filling it with love. Wherever you go, whatever you choose, you carry home with you. All our love, Mom and Dad. I'd never received it. The cancer had taken her 2 months before my 18th birthday, and in the grief that followed, it had been forgotten. Standing in that empty room, I fastened the bracelet around my wrist. The tiny house caught the late afternoon light, throwing small rainbows on the scarred walls. Tomorrow, contractors would continue erasing Mark's damage. In a month, the house would be restored. I could sell it, rent it, live in it whatever I chose. But tonight, I sat on the floor of my parents' bedroom, back against the wall where their headboard used to be, wearing my mother's last gift and holding my father's first promise. The house was mine, all $430,000 of it. The victory was complete, legal, and hollow as an empty room. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number that I almost deleted. Then I saw the photo attached Sophie and Evan at what looked like a motel pool, attempting to smile. The message read, "Aunt Rachel, Mom said I could text you. We're okay. I'm sorry about Dad. I love you." I texted back, "I love you too, Sophie, always." Because that's what family does. We love past the breaking. We hold on when letting go would be easier. And sometimes, we protect what matters by standing firm when everything in us wants to bend. The house stood around me, wounded but healing, empty but waiting. I had won everything I'd set out to win and lost the brother I'd tried my whole life to keep. But maybe Mrs. Patterson was right. Maybe my parents would be proud, not of the eviction or the legal victory, but of this, their daughter, adopted or not, had learned the difference between a house and a home, between blood and family, between winning and being right. The bracelet caught the light again as I stood to leave. Tomorrow would bring more repairs, more restoration, more rebuilding. But tonight, I locked the door of my childhood home and drove away, carrying with me the only inheritance that truly mattered: the certainty that I had been chosen, loved, and claimed by parents who saw past biology to the heart of what makes a family. The house was mine. The cost had been everything. And somewhere in a motel room, two children who shared my brother's blood but not his bitterness were learning the same lesson I'd discovered in an empty room. Sometimes the family you choose is the only family that counts. Thank you for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts about Rachel's journey. What would you have done in her situation?